Hi, my name is Talia. I'm a staff member at Discovery, and I'm going to help you do your homework today. So this is the average GPA question. And this one's pretty confusing, so I thought I would make a video on it. Disclaimer though, while this question is on the homeworks, it's not on any of the midterms or the final exam, because it's kind of too tedious and too long, and includes some concepts that are outside of the course. So if you want to watch this to learn how to do it, good for you, but it's not going to be tested. Okay, so in this question, we're asked to calculate the average GPA at each subject area at the University of Illinois. And the word each should it's like a keyword telling you, okay, we're grouping by. In this case, we'll be grouping by subject. And if you look at this data frame here, it has information about every class, including the subject, the number, and then the amount of each grade given in every course. So for example, there's a column for every letter grade, and in each column it contains, like 5 people got an A+ in this class, 3 people got an A, 0 people got an F, and these numbers are going to come into play in the question as well. But before we really go into details about the code or even the grouping, we need to go over how you calculate average GPA in the first place. I think that's one of the more confusing things about this question, because if you don't know how GPA is calculated before looking at this problem, then you're not going to know how to do it at all. And that happened to me when I was taking this class. I didn't know how to calculate GPA, and so I had to learn it on a separate website. So here it is, all in one. So this is kind of a tutorial that'll help you calculate your GPA for a single person, but this also works to calculate GPA of a class. Basically, GPA is a number, and that number comes from what letter grades you got in that class. Each letter grade has a number that it corresponds to. And one thing to note is that each base letter with no plus or minuses is a whole number. So an A is a 4, a B is a 3, a C is a 2, a D is a 1, and an F is a 0. And then the plus minus system adds or subtracts 0.33 from that base number. So for example, a C is a 2, a C plus, you add 0.33 to get a 2.33, and a C minus, you subtract 0.33 to get a 1.67. The only catch is that at the University of Illinois and some other schools, an A plus is weighted the same as an A. So while you might expect an A plus to be 4.33, it's not, it's just 4, just like A. And if you want to calculate your average GPA, you just take all of your numbers, your grade points from every class. That's what these are called, by the way. They're called weights, but it also it's easier to think about it as grade points. Each grade gives you a certain amount of points, and then you divide it by the total number of grades you get. So say you're in 3 classes, you got an A in 2 of them, and B in 1 of them, right? So A, B, and you want to know what your average GPA is. You got 4 points for the A, 4 points for the other A, and 3 points for the B. So you add them all up, and you get 11, and then you divide by the number of classes you had. Classic, take the average, math, and then you get your average GPA, and this is 3.67? Mm-hmm. Okay. My mental math is not always great, but that's what your GPA would be, and that would work for the class. So say this is one class, instead of these are your classes, say this is one class, and there's 3 students, and 2 of them got an A and 1 got a B, and the class's average GPA is 3.67. So now that we know how to calculate GPA just in itself, we're going to figure out how to translate it into code, and also how to use this in the context of our problem. So, like I said earlier, this question obviously involves group by because we're finding the average GPA of each subject. So let's just start writing out that line. We'll call it df group for simplicity. Apply the group by function, df.groupby. And we're grouping by subject, each subject, keyword each, because we want to find the average GPA for each subject individually. And then I'm going to skip this part because we don't know what we're aggregating with yet. We don't know what operation to put in there. And then don't forget at the end to reset index which just ensures that once you reorganize the data frame into groups, the indexes on the side go from 0 and ascend from there. So what are we going to aggregate by? And this requires a little bit of thinking. And if you think back to how to calculate average GPA, or how to calculate GPA by itself, you want to add up all the grades you have. So, for example, if you look at the stats column, say you want to see the total number of A's given in stats as a whole, not just for one subject, or not just for one class, but for the entire subject, you want to add 6 plus 2 to know that to know that the subject stats had 8 A's total. Same thing like for A minuses, they got 3 A minuses total. And so when you're reorganizing by subject, this is kind of already organized by like subject in itself, but when you aggregate, you're making one row for each subject, and then replacing the data with whatever aggregation function you add to it. So eventually the data frame would look like this, and I'm going to erase this because it's going to take up too much space, but when you aggregate, it'll be like one row of every subject, and then it'll add up all the information. So like the A plus for Asian American Studies would be a 9, and the A would be a 5. And that will give you the total number of each letter grade given in each subject. And that's important because when you're finding average GPA, you want to like add everything up and then divide by the number of things you have, like calculate the average. Does that make sense? It's a little bit of like a thinking, but like it'll be more clear as you keep going. So just trust me on this. Anyway, you aggregate by sum. Not count, because that would just count the number of rows, and then everything would just be 2 because there's 2 rows of Asian American Studies. You don't want to do that. You want to maintain these numbers and add them together. So for easier viewing, this is the group's data frame now. Every subject has one row, and every column holds the sum of all the rows that used to be in each subject. So the next step is to calculate, just like we did up there, the total number of grade points each subject earned. So that's weighting each letter grade with whatever like points correspond with it, right? And we can do that column by column, do math on columns, like adding them together and weighting them. So we don't have to do it individually for each subject. We can use the columns to do it for every single row, and just kind of like create a new column that stores the information that we want. So to put that in code terms, the way I do this problem is I make a new column called total grade points that basically just like stores, just like it says, the total grade points for each subject. So the subject, or the syntax for creating a new column, is just df brackets and then putting in a new column name, total grade points. And then you just want to do the calculations like we did above, or earlier, where you multiply each letter by the number of points it receives. So you could do 4 times the column that holds all the A pluses, so df A plus, because this column for every row contains the number of A pluses that were given. And when you multiply it by 4, that's the total number of grade points received by all the A pluses earned in each subject. So you do this, but then you want to add the grade points received for the other letter grade. So you do it again, plus 4, and then I think in Python it looks kind of like this, 4 times df A, plus, this time it changes, 3.67 times df A minus. And yes, it does keep going on and on and on until you get to F. Make sure not to include W, that is not counted in this problem. So yeah, these are the weights, again, for reference. Thank you. And you keep going on and on until it gets to the end. So I'm going to do that and then cut to the end of the line, so I don't have to like do it all on camera because that would be kind of annoying. So I wrote out the whole line. This might be kind of hard to read because it's kind of messy, but just to get the gist of it, I multiplied every column, every letter grade column by its corresponding weight and added it all together. And that creates a new column in this data frame. I'll just do it down here for each subject called total grade points. And that's just a big number. That's the total amount of grade points earned in every class. Kind of like, I explained that earlier. So now you have the total grade points, and you have to divide by the whole number of grades given to get the average. And luckily, that amount of that number is already given to you in a variable, and that's count. That basically adds up, or count is like a column that has the total number of students that were in each class, but since we aggregated by sum, it's the total number of students that took a class in every subject. So all the students who got a grade in the journalism subject or the stats subject and so on. So we have that number. All we have to do is divide our grade points by the number of grades given. And so that's a pretty easy line. And we want to save it in a new column that's average GPA. I think the question itself asks you to store it in a column titled exactly average GPA. So let's create that. Okay. So that's your column. Make a new column with that syntax. Make sure your capitalization is right. And then you can do math on the column you just made, total grade points, and the count column. So all you have to do is df, total grade points, divided by df count. So this new column, average GPA, will include some sort of valid answer, and a way you can check it is it between 0 and 4? A lot of them will be like 3.567, 2.814, 3.819. And you'll see all those numbers as your column. And that's how to calculate average GPA out of the GPA data frame. One thing to remember in this question is because this line is so long, it's really easy to have like a syntax error in here, like add an extra 3 for one of the weights, or like put A in there twice or instead of A and A minus. So like you have to really like look at all your little syntax things and all of your punctuation, make sure you have quotes around everything, make sure it's all right, or else these numbers will be slightly off and it'll be really frustrating to figure out why they're slightly off. So this question is annoying. If you don't want to do it, you honestly don't have to. I mean, I think it's for credit on one of the homeworks, so I mean, this will be helpful for that, but don't stress about it. It's not on the exams. 3 lines of code, you can do it. It just takes like some extra thinking. So yeah.